Before we start the seal, we need to unwind the thread and get that to the desired length of the threading that we're trying to achieve. So I usually unwind mine between my fingers and my toes. Once I get enough threading going, I cut that and I separate that into 5 so that when I'm ready to thread, I just get the 5 that I need. It makes for a much easier process. So I get the hair ready by moisturizing and detangling, and I get my 5 threads, and we're ready to start at the very, very base. So I start threading. I thread in sort of like a clockwise direction, and I make sure the threads are very close. You can thread as far apart or as close as you need to. So I thread, and once I get to the very, very end of the threading, and I thread to the point that I still see a little bit of hair left over, I tie a knot at the very end, and I try not to cut that thread until we're done with all of the hair. So you see that, watch very closely. So we thread to the very end, and as I'm getting towards the end, I slow down on the threading. It's not as fast so that we don't miss any hair or get any strands of hair as we thread. So as you can see, there is still some hair left over, and it seems that her hair is actually getting longer and longer. It's because, we're stretching the hair with the process of threading. So you still see that little fuzz of hair. I let that be, and I move on to the next hair strand. Sometimes I bend the hair before I complete the whole process, or I leave the hair straight. So here we're threading again. Once again, we start from the base, and that's Didi in the background saying hello. We start from the base and we braid, or we thread. I keep wanting to say braid, but we thread all the way to the very end. And once again, if we get to the tip, we tie the knot. And I personally choose to leave a little fuzz at the end. It's just a preference. But I also do not cut my thread. And I'll tell you why I don't cut my thread, because once we're done with this style, the particular style that I'm going for, I want to make sure that all the threads are joined together. And the SS thread hanging at the end, that helps me join everything together. And you'll see that process once we get towards the end of this video. So there's a lot of things that I love about threading. But one thing, the time that you spend threading. If I were braiding their hair, it would be much longer. The time that I spent threading all her hair, it didn't take me up to 2 hours to do. And it's even quicker when you have to undo the threading, because it just kind of comes out by itself. You don't have to spend too much time undoing, if it were a braid, undoing that braid and things like that. So it's just much easier for the girls to handle. And you can see Nalo here. She has her earphone in, so she's nicely distracted. She's watching some kind of movie on the iPad. So here I'm joining the thread together. I'm joining 2 at a time right now, but the goal is to join all the threaded hair and bring everything to the right side of her head. I want to have this thread just frame the right side of her face. And also this is one of my go-to style for them, and whenever I do the threading, I try to join it together so that we don't have any of the threads that kind of loosen itself up untimely. I want to make sure that this style lasts them for about 3 weeks or so before I have to undo their hair. So I'm slowly joining everything together. And also, let me just drop in a quick hint on maintenance of this. What I do, they have braid spray at the beauty supply store. I use the same braid spray meant for the scalp. I use that and spray the scalp. And also make sure I cleanse your scalp at least once a week. I just go in with a towel and I clean the roots. And daily I spray the braid spray, and I also put in some oil on the scalp and make sure their hair is always kept moisturized. So I'm still joining the threaded hair slowly, but the goal, like I said before, is to make sure everything is joined together. And you see that SS thread that I left on, you see all of them kind of dangling. So they kind of give you something to grip onto once you thread all the threaded hair together. Once you join all the threaded hair together, you have something to grab onto, because if you didn't have that excess thread, you won't have much to help you. So this is a little bit out of frame, but we are back on now. So I use the thread and just kind of continue threading. She's anxious to be done with the hair, but we're pretty much done. So once I get to the very tip of that hair, I tie a knot and I cut off the excess thread left, and you are pretty much done. So I bend this over to the side of her hair, and voila, we are done. Just as quick as that. And this, like I said, will last her for about 3 weeks. This is her picture about 1 week in with the hairstyle. It's still holding up. 2 more weeks to go and we take it down.